Switch sides with Katie.
But I'm always on your left.
Well, that was when there were 3 of us, and now the tallest go in the middle.
The whole dance will be backwards. I'm always on your left.
And right now you're getting on my last nerve. Switch.
Finally, please welcome to the stage.
Storytime Part 2, my ex threatened to kill me and then shut down the school with a bomb threat. So after he turns around and threatens my friend who's helping report him, he rushes out of the building and we turn and tell the office lady what he just said. She tried to call for him to get him to come back, but instead he ended up just bolting across the campus. They released my friends and I to go back to class, and everything was normal for about 2 class periods, but then in the hallway on our way to our 3rd period, they made everyone evacuate to the fields. They didn't even tell us why we were being evacuated, and we had to wait out there until it was all cleared for us to go back in, and once we were back in our classrooms, we were told it was a bomb threat. Everyone ended up finding out that it was Charlie who made this threat. It actually came out that he was threatening people with an unknown substance in a vial that he kept in his backpack. Come to find out, it was just makeup, like powdered makeup, that was unmarked. To this day, we don't know why he had makeup in his backpack and why he was saying that it was a bomb, but it was literally all reported on the local news in our city. Follow me for more story times and add me on Instagram for more content. Story time about how I fell for a pathological liar. So when I was 14, I had a really good friend who had a boyfriend. I had never met him before until one day I saw them both walking together. I introduced myself and they ended up breaking up later on. That's when he slid into my DMs on Facebook. At the time, I literally didn't make the connection that they were the same person because I'd only met him that one time. Long story short, we messaged back and forth a lot. I ended up taking the bus and hooking up with him, and we pretty much spent every day together since then. Everything seemed great, and then things went downhill in a very scary way. He would constantly flirt with other girls on Facebook who were literally all bots, and he would change his cover photos to pictures of them. He would literally just lie and make up excuses on why he was doing that. But I was still kind of young and he was 17. Then at my sister's wedding, he ended up exchanging info with one of her best friends, and one night when I was gone, he told me he was hanging out with her. She later messaged me and said that wasn't true. I came home to confront him and he screamed at me and threw me across the room. He beat me until I passed out and then woke me up by pouring a bottle of water over me. Somehow he manipulated me into staying with him past this, and things got even worse. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Instagram. Storytime part 2 on how I fell for a pathological liar. Being in this abusive relationship, I felt completely alone. I stayed with him for a while longer, but it all built up to this one moment. I told him that I was so tired of him hurting me that I was just gonna hurt myself. And he responded with, "You don't know anything about pain," and he locked me in a room. He pulled out a gun and pointed it to me and handed me a knife. He said if I wanted to just kill myself, just go ahead and do it. Obviously I didn't, but this was just another form of his psychological abuse. While I didn't leave him that night, I soon moved to Arizona to get away from him. For the first time, I was alone and without him, but I was able to help myself. I started working out, reading self-help books, meditating, and fixing my mind. I went from me begging him to stay to him begging for me back. The message that I have is that no matter how alone you feel, the person that can help you all along is yourself. Please take the time to find your own inner peace and never let anyone blind you from what you deserve. Show some love to the girl who sent in this story. And if you guys have a story that you would like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram. Story time about my emotionally abusive ex-fiance and his psychotic family. So when I started college, I met this guy on Facebook. And I mean, he was a dreamboat. We hit it off immediately and I knew that he lived in my hometown, even though I was out of state for college. And when I tell you this guy was sweet, I mean, he could put Nicholas Sparks novels to shame. While looking back, a lot of the stuff was cringy. He was my first relationship. Well, one day when we were on the phone, he was talking about how excited he was to be married one day and adopt animals together. I was totally excited about it with him, and he decided to propose on the phone, on the spot. He was like, "Please don't embarrass me. I'm down on one knee in front of everyone right now." And so I just said yes. While I thought this was the beginning of my happy ending, things got worse. He became extremely obsessive and controlling. He would blow up my phone whenever I was in lectures and get a hold of the college admissions office when I wouldn't respond, and would yell at me if I fell asleep because he thought I was ignoring him. I would literally wake up to texts about him hurting himself or selling my nudes. I was so scared that he was actually going to do something crazy that I left school and started driving back to my hometown. Once I got there, I met his family and realized just how messed up everything was. You won't believe what happens next. Follow me on Insta in the meantime. Story time about my emotionally abusive ex-fiance and his psychotic family. So once I got to town, I was finally able to meet his family, and he told them that I went to an Ivy League school and got in only because I was autistic, which was just untrue. I immediately noticed that the relationship between his mom and him were completely off. They both had each other as their wallpaper on their phone, and she acted as if she had a crush on him. When we decided to introduce both of our families together, his mom told my mom that she's sad that I don't look more like her because she's beautiful, then proceeded to say that it's nice that her son spends so much time with me even though I'm homely looking. She was also a therapist and claimed that it was her job to manipulate people and control their minds. Yeah, I bet that's the person you want to see when you're down. Because my boyfriend was in the military, when he went back overseas, I was pretty much forced to be on Skype with him 24/7. It didn't matter where I was, and if I didn't respond, he would post horrible horrible things about me on Facebook. Or he would send me videos of cats or puppies getting eaten by snakes to get back at me. I didn't watch them because they were so upsetting, but I was still too scared to leave him and I was entirely sleep deprived. Stay tuned for what's next and follow me on Instagram. Story time about my emotionally abusive ex and his psychotic family. So I was still not prepared to leave him and had to be on Skype with him all the time. In the bathroom or in the shower. If I refused and asked for privacy, he'd tell me how horrible and how ugly I was. And that he'd end his life because of my cruelty. The only time that I didn't have to talk with him was whenever I was hanging out with his mom. And when I did this, she would spend the entire time talking about him. She would tell stories about him and show me pictures, and in the pictures she took of him, he was either shirtless or sleeping. And the weirdest thing is that she said she taught her son how to be a good lover, whatever that means. She would also frequently tell me that I was going to hell for having sex with him, and she only knew this because she would log into his messages and read them. She talked about my body all the time and tried to give me tips so I could be prettier. This went on for months until I eventually made the decision to break up with him, and I had to move in with a friend because he kept sending scary things to my house. He would send stuffed animals with their limbs or head removed. He would also send empty envelopes, probably just trying to get me to come outside. Not long after this, he sent his cousin to try to kidnap me. And he said that he was doing this all in the name of love. Thankfully, this is over now, but if you have a story you want to share, follow me on Insta. So this is about the time that my best friend spread a rumor that I had an orgy with 15 girls. So in my freshman year of high school, I became friends with this girl that we can call Sarah. I started to get red flags immediately after we became friends. After people started to notice that we were hanging out, I got so many DMs on Instagram telling me to watch out for her. Anyways, I didn't believe them and I continued to be friends with her for a while. But then she got really jealous once I started to talk to this guy. I turned him down so I thought that she would calm down too, but she did not. I could really feel that something was off. The next time we hung out together, she hid her phone around me. I knew that this was really weird because 1, it had never happened before. And 2, just like why? Is something gonna pop up that you don't want me to see? I also went over to her house to hang out and I noticed that her parents were whispering a lot and kind of looking at me funny. But again, I just brushed it off until I got a DM from an old friend from elementary school. She stated that Rachel told many people that I had had an orgy with over 15 girls. So this is when I decided to get revenge. Storytime part 2 of when my best friend spread a rumor that I had an orgy with 15 other girls. So once my old friend from elementary school hit me up and let her know that she was spreading this rumor, I finally believed what people had said before. Soon after this, I found out she kept a journal about me. Kind of like a burn book, but just for me. She wrote every detail about my life in it. It included things like arguments that I had with my family, and also every single person that I had added on Snapchat was listed there. So to get revenge, I sat down to make a TikTok. The purpose of it was to call her out and clear my name, so that everyone knew that what she was saying was a lie, and so that they could know how actually crazy she was. This TikTok ended up being removed almost instantly, yet little did I know she had screen recorded it and sent it over to the principal. Less than a week later, her and her boyfriend were doing the nasty in the parking lot of the school, so I decided to respond by taking a video of it and anonymously sending it to our principal. Sarah ended up getting expelled and I got away with a detention. It was honestly kind of worth it. Follow for more story times and my Instagram's linked below. So this is about the time that I almost got arrested for sneaking into an abandoned hospital. So about an hour away from where I live, there's this abandoned hospital, and me and 3 other friends had went there previously to do a little photo shoot, but it wasn't until another night that we decided that there was still spots that we hadn't explored in there yet. So we picked up another friend and we stopped by a store and we grabbed some flashlights and drove an hour out to the abandoned house. Pretty much the entire area surrounding the hospital is abandoned too. So there's a bunch of broken down neighborhood houses, a school, a gym, a church, all just eerily gone. So we pulled into the parking lot and got out and got all of our stuff ready to explore. And this time we were able to check out the entire thing. Here's a picture of what it looks like during the day. So you can only imagine what this looked like at night. And the whole time we felt like we were being watched. During this, 2 very intoxicated men show up and they asked if they could join us with our exploring. They were kind of cute, so we said yes. But that's when we saw flashing lights from outside the building. The cops showed up and blocked the entrance, so we knew we were gonna have to make an escape. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Instagram. Storytime part 2. I almost got arrested after sneaking into an abandoned hospital. As soon as we realized the cops showed up, we tried to make it to the center of the building. 2 of my friends and I were somehow able to make it across the entire hospital and find a back entrance where we were able to hide out for a little bit. We started to work our way around the building to try to get to our car in the front, but as we did that, a cop started walking by, so we had to hide and duck in the grass and trees. We had to get across the street and go through another patch of dirt in order to get back to my car. But the thing is, 2 of my other friends were still inside, with the intoxicated boys. They ended up falling through a hole in the floor and falling down on top of each other in a pile of broken glass in parts of the building. This was like the bottom basement. Somehow they were still able to make it out of there by using the stairs that were completely messed up. By the time that they had gotten out, the cops had went to another part of the broken down town. So as we were approaching the car, they were running out of the building. We all hop into the car and catch up on what happened. The two girls from inside the building had really bad glass injuries, so we immediately went to the gas station to get first aid. Follow me on my Instagram, link below, and DM me if you have a story. So this is about the time that my toxic best friend tried to sleep with my dad. To provide just a little bit of backstory, we'll call this friend Jordan. And I met her over this past summer, and it turned out we both had kids around the same age. So of course, wanting my kid to have a little bit of interaction, we decided to do play dates together. Our kids started hanging out so much that we got really close. And I honestly considered her to be really trustworthy, so I decided to invite her to this family cookout. And that's when things really hit the fan. From a distance, I saw herself introducing herself to my dad, giving herself a little hair flip, and blatantly flirting. I would like to add that Jordan has been happily married for years. So watching this flirting get worse, I decided to confront both of them. I was like, yo, I do not approve of you hooking up with my dad. He's 20 years older than you and you are married. She was like, okay, and I thought it was left at that. So months go by and I have her over to help me take pictures for OnlyFans. I was doing like a little promotion thing and she offered to hop in the pictures with me, which I thought was totally cool. But then her husband comes home to surprise her. And then I kid you not, he looks over her shoulder and sees her sending them to my dad. Like for part 2. Storytime part 2 to my toxic friend trying to sleep with my dad. So after Jordan's husband came home and saw that she was sending my dad the OnlyFans pictures we took, he turned around and got upset with me and accused me of trying to set them up. He told me to get out of the house, but then followed me trying to confront me at the same time. I called my dad soon after to get his point of view from the story, and he said that she just willingly sent him. He never asked for any of them. At least that's just what he claims. And now it's been almost 2 months of this battle, and I've barely been able to speak to my own dad. She has tried multiple times to become my friend again, and I decided to even test her to see if that was possible by giving her some information that was not true to see if she'd tell my dad. My dad knew almost immediately. It's kind of a bummer because her husband was a really cool guy, but I no longer want someone like this in my life. Follow me on Instagram for more content, and if you have a story that you would like to share, DM me. This is about the time that I ended up dating a guy in order to cover up for dating another guy. So I was kinda sorta low-key cheating at the time. But I can explain. So to provide a little bit of backstory, I was living with my biological father at the time. Not exactly what I wanted to do, but this was because of some circumstances that were going on. So due to this, I had to move to a new school and start my senior year at a different place. A few days had started and I didn't really like it very much, so they ended up changing my classes around. And I got stuck in this new art class. So I walked in and immediately this cute guy walked in. He introduced himself, I'll call him Brad, and he said, hey, and we ended up talking the entire class period. So not only was he cute, but he had an amazing personality as well. So obviously I had to give him my number. There's no other option. That night he texted me how pretty I was and how he was dying to get to know me. But the text got a little bit explicit, and my father ended up going through our text messages and immediately did not like this man right off the bat. So when we started dating, I didn't get his approval either, and my dad made us break up. I still liked this man and was completely heartbroken. When I went to school the next day, I was told by another guy that he liked me. So I ended up coming up with a little plan. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Insta. Storytime part 2 about how I was dating a guy in order to cover up for dating another guy. So after my dad forced me to break up with the guy that I was currently dating because he didn't like him, and I realized that this other guy at school did like me, I figured that I would talk to Brad and tell him this little plan that I had. This new guy that liked me was very cute, but not my type at all. But he did have a better standing with my father. So I decided to start dating the guy that my dad liked, but also dating Brad on the low key. Every single art class, I would spend time with Brad, and I would text him all day, and we would FaceTime at night, but then I would go on dates with the other guy. That way it would be like a cover for my dad, so he really wouldn't go through my phone. Well, yes, I was two-timing, and this was extremely exhausting. I really felt like I screwed up when I started to develop feelings with the new guy. I tried to literally list off reasons on why I didn't like this guy, but honestly, he was just too caring and too sweet for me not to. So I ended up breaking up with him because I felt like this was going too far, and I got back with Brad and just did it behind my dad's back. But Brad then left me for his ex, so I ended up sneaking over to the other guy's house, and that's how I lost my virginity. Now I'm happily married to a totally different guy 3 years after this whole situation. If you guys have a story you'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram. So one time I decided to get revenge on my boyfriend by hooking up with his brother and glitter bombing his car. So back in March of 2020, I was working at this little travel stop. It's where a lot of the truck drivers would come in, and I ended up meeting this really charming guy. He would stop by there often, and he was really sweet and funny, and we had a really good connection. So we decided to start dating. But immediately after, it got very toxic. While we were clearly in a relationship, he never wanted to put a label on things, and we would get into extremely violent fights where he would threaten to slap me or beat me. I would usually retaliate by calling him out for being a really bad father. And also, when we were doing the nasty, he would say really weird things, like, I'm going to breed you, or trap me. I'm thinking, boy. That's a really scary thing to say in bed. Ignoring all these red flags and continuing to date him, I figured out why he didn't want to put a label on things. It was obviously because he was cheating. I was upset and I told his brother about what was going on, and his brother came up with an idea for us to hook up together. And this continued to happen for a while until I felt like it wasn't good enough, and I decided that his car was going to be next. Like for part 2 and follow me on Insta. Part 2 of how I plotted revenge on my boyfriend by hooking up with his brother and glitter bombing his car. So by this time, I'd been hooking up with his brother in our house for a while. This is why you have to be careful of people videoing you doing the nasty. So every year, we did a few things, but no big deal. About 2 months go by and we're still talking, but we're also saying I love you. But I ended up being messaged by a popular guy around this time who wanted me to come over to his house. I figured since me and the guy that I was talking to weren't officially together, it'd be fine. So I did, but the guy ended up finding out about it. So I had to go over to his house and basically beg for forgiveness. He said he forgave me, but this is when he came up with the plan to video me, which went south. Stay tuned for part 2 and follow me on Instagram. Part 2 to my ex videoing me doing the nasty. So even though he forgave me, he still decided to video me like doing the famous call her daddy move. We continued to talk after this, but after a few days, some of the kids in school started to look at me funny. They would act super weird around me, and eventually I just asked someone what happened. And they were like, well, there's a video of you. I wasn't too stressed about it, I just asked him if he would stop showing people. And he said he would, but the video continued to go around. I started to worry once my best friend's cousin told my best friend's mom. That night, my best friend's mom went over to our house to tell my dad. My dad absolutely freaked out, and this is how everything went so downhill. My dad literally wanted to send me away to boarding school, and we ended up getting a call from the police about this issue. Guy ended up getting charged over this video. He was supposed to do community service, but ended up not doing it, so he was just fined. I really didn't want anything like this to happen, and we're now friends today. So I guess everything's okay. If you guys have a story you'd like to share, follow me and DM me on Instagram.